The three Daves talk about transport, television and toys.
Hello, and welcome to the third podcast of the Three Daves Talk About. My name is David K. Jones, but everybody calls me Dave.
Hello, my name is David J. Broom, and everybody calls me Dave.
Hello, my name is David Heaton, and everyone calls me Dave.
Our first topic today is transport, and I'm going to kick this off by mentioning my father's first car, which was an Austin A40, and I always remember this car. We went to Newquay one summer in this vehicle, and it actually broke down in the middle of Bodmin Moor, and the fan belt had
Did you see
snapped.
the beast, Dave?
No, I didn't see the beast.
There's no beast?
No beast.
Okay.
Man, no beast. So the fan belt broke. And the other fascinating thing about this car was it had a starting handle, which all modern vehicles don't have. My first car I bought in 1990, and it was 20 years old when I bought it. It was a Cortina. I had 12 months of absolutely brilliant time with this car till the jacking points failed on it, and I used to get wet feet when I was driving in the rain. On a more serious note, going back to my first flight, it was June 1967. We flew from Manchester to Ostend on the school trip, and the pilot's name was Captain Marlowe. And the following week we were due to fly back to Manchester, and the same type of aircraft, an Argonaut, was due to land 10 minutes before us, and it actually crashed at Stockport. And it turned out that the pilot of the crashed aircraft was Captain Marlowe, who flew us out the week before. He survived the crash, but I think there was 72 people were killed, and they put it down to a fuel distribution failure in the aircraft.
Yeah, that sounds terrible, doesn't it?
I'm going to say, so it had come all the way from wherever it had flown from to get to Stockport, which is about, 10 miles from the airport?
Yeah,
and that's when...
It was actually on its final approach, and it came down in the middle of Stockport, yeah. And it was scary, really, because we were in the air at the time, didn't know anything about this, but the people who were waiting for us at the airport, like our parents, were panicking because of all the news that was going around the airport. So it's a bit of a scary time for them.
I can well imagine.
Yeah.
If you've heard some of our previous podcasts, if you haven't, check them out. All available at good prices, free. But you'll know that I came into monies later in my life. Not money. Dave's looking at me here like
Money?
I've got millions.
Yes.
I mean,
rich.
like...
He has got millions of
He's
dollars.
rich.
I want you to know that when you come to a gig, just ask him for a loan.
He won't buy you a pint. He's tight.
No, but he'll give you a loan.
Yes, give you the shirt off my back. But shirt. You'll know that...
I'll edit that one, don't worry.
Okay,
I thought he said
I
something
thought he
else.
said something naughty, yes.
gentleman. But no, so things came to me in later life. Going to cars that Dave started off with. My first car was a battered Hillman Hunter.
The Roots Group.
We did I have made a list of things that, and we have looked at each other's lists, and Dave put some nice cars on for us to think about, but mine predestines all those. It was clapped out when I bought it, I think. I can't even remember the reg, but it was one of the old-fashioned regs. There was rust everywhere, but it did exactly what I needed, and it got me from A to B. And I loved it because it was my first car, and it was the first thing I owned that, other than the small things like the records that we've talked about previously, clothes that we've talked about previously, but as an actual item of some worth that wasn't actually worth anything, it was the first thing that I possessed that I could go and show off to my friends and family, and they'd sort of, I think, sneered behind the backs at me because of the car that it was, but I will cherish that
But it was
Pullman
yours.
Hunter. It was mine, and I loved it. You've talked about flights, Dave. My first flight was on a jumbo jet to Tenerife, and I got that because I was daft enough to listen to someone who was selling a timeshare. A lady approached me in Bolton Town Centre whilst I was supporting one of my clients, who at the time was, shall we say, being unruly. But a fair play to her, she still approached me, so I took the ticket off her, attended the seminar for the thing. At the end, one of the sportsmen came and said, "So are you interested?" My reply was, "If you're daft enough to offer an holiday, I'm daft enough to sit here for 2.5 hours, listen to your speech. Now, where do I sign up for the holiday?" And true to the word, they give us a week's holiday, and when we turned up at Manchester Airport, the aircraft we went on was a jumbo jet.
What do you remember about it, Dave? How big was it?
Having never been on a plane before, only seeing things in the sky, you think, well, they're all big, but when you get next to it, and then there's a couple of planes parked on either side of it that are dwarfed, it was like Christmas had come, and it was wow.
It's when you actually get onto the aircraft at the nose,
Yes.
and you've got to walk right the way through to the tailpiece, because it's divided up into sections.
Yeah, and it's how
It's
many seats
huge.
wide it is.
It's so wide. Something like 8 seats in the middle. Isn't
It's
it? Something
some,
like that.
I think it
Probably
was 4-2-2, so it was 8 across. Where
more. Yeah.
you get on a plane now and it's just 4 or 6 in it. You've 3 on one side, 3 on the other, but you had the 2 aisles that you could walk down.
That's right.
That made it a lot
And
easier.
each compartment has its own cinema screen as well.
We actually we weren't placed upstairs
No.
because that was posh bit, and I weren't allowed up there. But we did manage to have a walk up and see how the other half lived. And again, if our world was wow, upstairs was wower, if that's a word.
Wow. That's a Bolton expression.
But you know what I mean?
Good.
It's like it's gone up another section.
Yeah.
Well, my first bit of transport that I owned that was truly mine was a bike. And I loved that bike. I have to admit, I spent every bit of my pocket money on that bike until I discovered music, and then I spent every bit of my pocket money on music. But that bike had everything. It had new mudguards, new wheels, new brakes. It had a horn. It had 2 mirrors either side of it. It had transfers down the side. It had a special pump, not a normal pump. This was a special one. I can't remember what was special about it, but I know it was special. It also had a container so you could put your water or lemonade or whatever you had and put that on the bike. And I went everywhere with it. I went to the shops. I went everywhere.
But did it have Stir Me Out, your 3-speed?
I can't remember what the gears were. It had 5 gears. I think it had 5 gears.
Posh.
It was a very posh one, yeah. But I spent every penny on it. You know, that was my life. Then I discovered music and tossed it to one side. Roundabout, oh my goodness me, early 1980s, I passed my test. I passed my driving test first time, hooray! And I didn't buy a car. No, foolishly, I bought a second-hand Ford Luton box van. That's because I was in a band at the time. The band were called A Better Mousetrap, and we were playing gigs all over Liverpool in the northwest, and I was the designated driver. So suddenly I became the person who didn't drink. I didn't drink any alcohol. I had orange. But that van was huge. And also, because it was so old, it was a real monster to turn corners. And I can remember one in particular coming on from a gig, and it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, maybe a bit later than that. We're coming back from the gig, and we're being followed by a police car. So I'm doing my best to stick within the speed limits. But eventually, it pulls past me and pulls us over and asks me what's in the back of the van. And I said, I'll show you if you want. So I opened him up, and all the equipment was there, and the rest of the band were there, sat in the dark in the back of the van, and wondering why I'd stopped, and wondering why I was showing this policeman them. So I said, this is Brian, this is Peter, this is Tony. Do you like him? Very good. And he laughed and drove off. So my first transport was a Ford box van, a Luton van, which I loved to bits.
With no power steering in those days.
Power steering? That's how I got my exercise, turning a corner. You were turning the wheel, turning the wheel, turning the wheel. The brakes were really, really bad. And of course, it's high seats. The seat was really well above the ground, so you're really having to press hard on the pedals. So yeah, that was my first glorious bit of driving, a big Ford van. When I got rid of that, I got a Ford Fiesta. And funny enough, I've still got a Ford Fiesta, but it's not the same one. I should point that out. It is not the same one. Now, going back to what you said, Dave, about the upstairs on the jumbo jet.
Yep.
One of the things that I had always looking forward to was going first class on the train. And when that finally happened, I realised what I'd been missing going second class on the train. Because the seats were like, the best way I can describe it is an old type of train. They were really, really big. The compartments had their own little doors, so you sat there, there's just you and probably two other people sat in this little side compartment.
There's usually
the seats
six.
were there was only two people in the one with me.
Okay.
And the seats were so comfy. It was like luxury, complete total luxury. And I'd always dreamed of going first class because, of course, somebody comes along and says, do you want a drink? What would they do that for? But they did. And of course, I ordered a drink. So it was lovely. So my first experience of first class on a train was a bit like you going on a jumbo jet. This is what I've been missing all my life. Pity I can't afford it now.
Yeah, I went to Wembley in 1964 to watch Widnes play. And we went on the first class on the train. And it was a compartment with a sliding door. And we actually sat with Keith Macklin, who was the commentator on the radio. Yeah, and Widnes won, of course.
That's all right.
Which
Can you remember
was
the
the
score?
bonus.
Can you remember the score?
16-4.
I have no idea. I was just asking you.
I think it was 16-4 against Hulkinston Rovers. We stayed in the same hotel as the Harlem Globetrotters.
Okay.
That's
the
a load
embassy.
of balls.
Yeah, it was. Bouncing balls.
Did they play anything while you were there? Did you see them practicing anything?
Meadowlark Lemon's knees actually stuck out to the other side of the table when he sat down for breakfast. He was so tall.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
From mentioning trains, my dad used to work for the railway, so a lot of my time prior to cars was moving around the country, was on trains. I remember we used to get a quarter fare pass, which helped in my coiting days, going up to Newcastle. And I also got two free Europe passes and one world pass that we could have as a family. We never got to Europe, we never got round the world, but in UK I had my first share of money off BR, thank you very much. Talking first class, you've heard the two Daves being nice. I'll tell you a little anecdote about travelling first class. Myself and my brother John were involved in the disabled facilities at Wembley Stadium, having previously done them at what was the Reebok Stadium, which is now the Tough Sheet Stadium.
Tough Sheet, that was the name.
The Tough Sheet Stadium.
I got them something else.
Okay, well, that's what a lot of people think, but they're wrong. But we had to go down to Wembley about every 6 weeks for a planning meeting with several other people from different disability groups that were doing different parts of the facilities. Our John has a complete copy of the plans of Wembley. So we always used to book second class to go from Wigan Wallgate down to Euston, and then we would also try and book with a table so we could put the plans out. If, however, there was no table, we always used to get the guard and say, listen, this is my brother John, he's blind, we're going down to Wembley, we're part of the trust that's building the new one, we're part of the disabled facilities section, we have all the plans, at which our John would pull out the plans. The conductor was always invariably male and wanted to look at these plans. We booked a seat with tables, but as you can see there are none. We need to lay them out so that I can describe to John what is actually being changed, so that when we get to the meeting, he's the voice, he knows what he's talking about. Gentlemen, come this way. And we got taken into first class invariably. "Can we get you a drink, sir? Can we get you anything to eat, sir?" And then the guard would sit for a spell with us and look at the plans. The amount of times we pulled that scam, maybe shouldn't say it, but there you are. That's
Yep.
first class for the scally of the band. Our second topic is going to be about television. And I want to take us all back to a time when there was a 5-minute segment prior to the 6 o'clock news that used to come on that was filled with a children's programme. But I loved that 5-minute segment. You had the Magic Roundabout, you had Captain Pugwash, you had Hector's House, and I'm sure you two, once I've finished, will throw in some more.
Boing, said Zebedee.
Boing, said Zebedee. Time for bed, said Zebedee. How many of our generation, if you said Magic Roundabout, would know Florence and Doodle,
Don't forget Dylan.
Zebedee, Dylan, Mr. McGinty on his tricycle, and Ermintrude the
Yeah.
cow, and all the adventures that they got up to. Again, if you looked at Dylan, he looked so spaced out, very 60s.
Did you mention Tintin?
I
Was that one of the before the news
I
programs?
can't. I don't recall it being Dave. I think maybe
Hershey's
that.
Adventures of Tintin.
Yeah, I think that was more.
I think
a
that
full
lasted a bit
series.
longer.
Yeah.
That was about half an hour, maybe 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It was like a cartoon, like the Flintstones. It was that sort of that length.
Yeah.
The programs I think Dave's thinking about only lasted 5 minutes.
5
Yeah,
minutes.
yeah.
Like 5 minutes.
Before the news.
And Captain Pugwash couldn't captain a boat if he tried. It was always his cabin lad that came to the rescue and got them through every situation that they found themselves in. And then you had Hector's House, where you had 3 dogs. There was Hector, his wife, and a cat. So it was 2 dogs and a cat. And whatever happened, they had a situation, and he would be a good old Hector at the end. But they were just 5-minute little snaps. You're looking puzzled, Dave. Are you?
I'm thinking, did you mention rhubarb and custard?
I didn't, but that is another one that I did say you would throw some at me.
Yeah.
Again, that's a cat and a dog. Da-da-da-da,
I apologise for the interruption then by somebody trying to sing.
We'll get a job in Mammoth Tribute, in the Mammoth Tribute then.
But there were some of the memories for that. The other things that go back for me are 2 different things. There was, were you a Magpie fan or a Blue Peter fan? Were you a Tiswas fan? Were you a Swap Shop fan? For me, there were 2 things that straddled and made it a choice of one over the other. Magpie,
Careful, Dave.
Tiswas.
Calm down.
Magpie, Tiswas were my 2 favourites out of the 4 I selected.
Well, I used to watch Blue Peter. And
Okay.
when I used to watch Blue Peter, it was Christopher Trace, Valerie Singleton, and John Noakes.
John Noakes was the best.
This was before Shep came along. And they used to have... The dog was called Petra.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was the Alsatian, weren't it?
And they used to do crazy things at Christmas, like making calendars.
Out of coat hangers.
coat hangers and what
Here-
a fire escape.
Here's one I prepared earlier.
So
but-
save all your cornflake boxes, chaps.
Absolutely. But they came up with some fabulous ideas to make out of absolutely nothing. And the amount of people that, if you talk to, again, watched and had a go at actually making them. But yes, so on the Tiswas Swap Shop, it was definitely more anarchic in Tiswas. And I always remember Genesis actually did an episode in 1980 on there, and they got the Phantom Flan Flinger,
Correct.
got them, and they put in the cage with the buckets of water over them, and it was just an anarchic difference to how sweet and mellow Swap Shop was. Not that Swap Shop wasn't good, because again they had the idea of you put a toy and you get a toy out and all like that. So
One of the things that Tiswas did was it introduced us to Spit the dog,
Bob Carroll G's.
Bob Carroll, geez, yeah.
Yeah.
who now runs a candle shop.
Does he really?
He really runs a candle shop.
So
I
he's
can remember Spit the dog. I can remember Lenny Henry being
Yeah.
on it. He was on it on a regular basis.
yeah.
And I can also remember always getting buckets of water on people all the time and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Going back to Blue Peter, is because on Blue Peter they once made something called Tracy Island.
Yep.
Now Tracy Island, if you don't know what that is, that was part of a series called Thunderbirds, and Thunderbirds was part of a ongoing different set of programs by Jerry Anderson. And Jerry Anderson started off, his first program was called Four Feather Falls, which are the cowboy, and he had 4 magic feathers, and the 4 feathers could do the following things. 2 of them could make his guns shoot when he wasn't actually holding on to them. One of them made the horse talk, and one of them made the dog talk. So you can see the level of intellectual challenge that was involved in Four Feather Falls. That was followed quickly by Supercar. Most people think it was followed by Space Patrol. They're wrong. Space Patrol was made by somebody else. Supercar was the next one, followed by, it was a car that could travel on land, in the air, and under the sea, just in case you're interested. That was followed by Fireball XL5, which was a spaceship that went all over the place. It was a bit of magic there because they'd take these pills in Fireball XL5, which allowed them to breathe while they were outside without wearing an astral spacesuit. Magic. Fireball XL5 was followed quickly by Stingray. Stingray was an underwater adventure program in a submarine called Stingray. There were 2 sort of aquanauts, and there was also this other female aquanaut who couldn't speak. Very difficult to explain all this. You had to watch it to be there. That was followed by Thunderbirds, which is the classic that everybody remembers. Thunderbirds being